The only time it's ever been brought to force, ever been implemented, was when the United States was actually attacked on September 11th.
Philip, thank you so much for your time. The Prime Minister definitely went in with a strategy to charm Donald Trump, and it seems to have worked.
It seems to have worked from the very moment he arrived at the White House. The president met him at the door of the West Wing, which he doesn't always do for even important guests. But he did that. There was clearly a smile on his face. And I think you could read in the body language, as the president later said, he feels like he knows Starmer. They've gotten to know each other well. He and the prime minister, of course, had a meeting back in September in New York on the margins of the UN General Assembly before the election. So I think there is a relationship there. And I think we've all known that for Donald Trump, there is a special place for the United Kingdom. After all, his mother came from Scotland. He spends a good deal of time there, as he said today. And really, he couldn't have been more positive about the special relationship. He repeated several times, it was very special, a unique friendship. We're going to keep it that way, very strong. And of course, I'll just mention, as we all saw, Prime Minister Starmer very strategically brought that letter from King Charles, presented at the very beginning of the meeting. The president read it right there, I think in front of the cameras, about an invitation for a state visit, a second state visit. The first time this has ever happened. You could see how pleased and proud President Trump is about that, and he accepted on the spot.
You normally give those gifts sort of at the end of your meeting, but Keir Starmer wanted to get out in front and sort of start the meeting on such a positive tone. The charm offensive did get him lots of warm words, but let's talk about in terms of commitments. Trade, it may be that there is a potential of a US-UK deal now without tariffs. I mean, that would be an extraordinary win for the Prime Minister.
It would. And of course, the president had said how tariffs are one of his favorite words. He's talked about tariffs in his campaign. He's talked about them in the 5 weeks. Yes, it's only 5 weeks since he took office for this second term. And he said today very much publicly that he thought there was a way forward. He complimented the prime minister on his efforts at persuasion. We'll have to see.
You earn every bit of what they pay you in terms of how tough he talked on trade and tariffs.
That's right. It was quite a compliment. Now, we also know that Donald Trump says a lot of things, and he may say other things tomorrow or next month or the next day. You can't be sure. It is a reality show. There are different narratives. There are different plot lines. There are different characters. This week has been up and down on this reality show, and it turned out very positive. It was a great episode, and I was certainly pleased to see it, recalling my own time in the Oval Office then with Prime Minister Johnson when I accompanied him back from London to meet with President Biden. And of course, trade was a discussion point then, and the idea of any sort of free trade agreement was really not on at that point. Now we'll see. The president seemed to feel that agreements could be made, deals could be done.
What the Prime Minister really wanted some assurance on was US security guarantees in whatever peace plan is arranged between Ukraine and Russia. And he didn't really get any of that yesterday. President Trump very clear not to give any words that would suggest that there would be US forces in any sort of significant capacity. Where does the Prime Minister take this next?
Look, I think that's no surprise. The president has been very clear from the beginning, certainly in the campaign, that US boots on the ground, as he puts it, was not going to happen. He's been very focused on bringing back US troops. After all, it was President Trump in his first term that cut the deal, that negotiated the withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan. That sort of ended up being something implemented ultimately by President Biden, to much criticism, frankly. But that was a Trump deal. What he has said, and I think what was significant yesterday in the conversation and the press conference with the prime minister, was talking about how much in the context of Ukraine, they had been talking to the NATO Secretary General, talking about general support for U.S. He was very leaning very forward on the idea that a fair peace deal would be brought forward. Far different from things we heard even earlier in the week, and certainly when he was having, let's say, a bit of a feud with President Zelensky, who, of course, is arriving today at the White House. And you also heard something really quite remarkable, Rosie. Was a question was asked about NATO and Article 5, and President Trump said, "I support Article 5." That was significant because that
remind people what that means.
Article 5, of course, is the part of the NATO treaty, the Treaty of Washington, that binds together the allies. An attack on one is an attack on all. And the only time it's ever been brought to force, ever been implemented, was when the United States was actually attacked on September 11th, back in 2001. So there have been questions whether the President Trump, with his very harsh words, both in his first term and now, about spending on defense, whether he would really see NATO through. So that was a positive thing to be heard. And of course, speaking of defense, Keir Starmer came with another very good card in hand. I think obviously planned to bring this announced 2.5% of UK GDP to be spent on defense. It's a recognition that this is necessary. We've all seen that Russia is a threat. It's a complex and dangerous world. And frankly, I think it's quite reasonable to say that we are in some ways at war with Russia. Putin certainly sees it that way. He's at war with the West. He's been doing things even in Britain on British soil for a number of years, these hybrid attacks, sabotage, even poisoning people. So the realization that countries do have to step up, Europe, including the UK, needs to become more productive, needs to get the economy moving again, needs to be innovative, but none of that.
Donald Trump wants to hear Kiss Armor. Arrived yesterday trying to give him as much of that as possible, definitely. Taking the charm offensive strategy. There's quite a lot more diplomacy at play when President Trump meets President Zelensky today. Lots of European countries will be meeting a little bit later on this week at Cayenne. We'll be hosting that meeting. What is the best way for the UK Prime Minister to get what he needs out of President Trump? I think he needs to continue to underscore the importance of what we all call the special relationship, but let's remember it is special. It is unique. Next year we're going to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. That was, of course, a different aspect of our relationship, but it reminds us that we, the United States, have been bound in certain ways to the United Kingdom, really since our founding, and that remains key. This year we're going to celebrate the 80th anniversary of V-Day, and it was mentioned in the press conference and in the visit that the bus of Winston Churchill is back in the Oval Office, thanks to President Trump bringing it there. He's proud of that. I'm not sure many people know that in the US ambassador's office in London, the ambassador sits beneath a portrait of Winston Churchill in that office, by tradition that hangs there, and that reminds us too that these are important times, that what we do together, and you heard that repeated many times by President Trump, is vitally important. We'll see that state visit take place. I think we'll just keep that engagement going. President Trump is unpredictable. That's a part of what he likes. He likes to be predictable, as I said. It very much is a reality show. You don't necessarily know what's going to happen. Unscripted, often full of contradictions.